MODOK likes them big old juicy butts.
MODOK is a new Hulu original series, which is now owned by Disney. And Marvel is owned by Disney as well. So while I'm not too hyped about the continued monopolization and homogenization of media, this show ain't bad. In fact, it's really good, which is kinda did and didn't surprise me. I mean, it's made by Robot Chicken, so I knew I would at least get a couple of laughs. But there's actually a really compelling story here.
MODOK! And do you know what MODOK stands for?
Mental organism designed
For killing. For killing.
First off, the show centers around MODOK, which has a villain I've always been lukewarm on. I remember him from one or the two bad Iron Man cartoons. You know, he was originally a Captain America adversary, which makes sense. Cap is enhanced physically, while MODOK was intellectually enhanced in a way that caused his body to dwindle. But since then, he's kind of been, pardon the pun, a floating villain in the Marvel Universe.
You have a hover chair. You can fly!
It's a leg day.
I know he was the main villain in that crappy Avengers Live service. So anyway, it's safe to say I was kind of like, whatever. You know, why do we need a MODOK series? Supervillain, family guy with an eyepiece shoehorned in. Boy howdy.
Oh, no one took the cans out?
But you know what? This whole thing is shockingly well crafted and actually provided some twists and turns that really kept me invested. Starting with the fact that Patton Oswalt is just a great MODOK. His delivery is a really blunt, dry combination of pathetic and self-confident.
Well, you didn't need to push my son into an open grave.
I very much needed to. He was going to win. Anyway...
I think it's because he believes being factually accurate is more of a victory than concealing just how inept he is.
Your husband was bitten by a raccoon and has rabies. Wrong, I ate baking soda. And if I did have rabies, it would not be from a raccoon. It would be from the many rats that I live with in my apartment. Good night!
Also, I think Pat's stint on King of Queens, which, you know, is not my cup of tea, but I think that has given him the ability to bridge the gap between average sitcom material and the wacky, dark, nerdy stuff I really like about his stand-up. There's also a meta element in the form of MODOK's time twin. Long story, MODOK goes to the past, and his past self gets really pissed off that MODOK isn't like a super badass emperor of the world by now.
You disgust me. Jody, look, it's me from college. Silence, you worm. And what a rude little boy I am.
So he dedicates an entire season to just messing with him. It's an audience surrogate for the fans who say, yeah, MODOK shouldn't have a family. He shouldn't, be stuck in the suburban setting.
I was supposed to have a beautiful life. I was supposed to be a world conqueror. Instead, this.
Canadian bacon, American bacon, Italian bacon, more Canadian bacon.
And I'm kind of included in that group. Not vehemently. Not like, oh, you ruined the character. No, I'm just more of an eye roller. But, by the end of the first season, the family doesn't exist. And you're like, oh shit, I kind of miss them now. Speaking of the family, that was the aspect I was kind of dreading about all this. But actually, they are a really good fit for MODOK. That's because they are basically all one day away from becoming supervillains themselves.
You're gonna be a big, bright star.
Good luck.
Melissa, who I thought was going to be, really awkward and self-conscious about, basically just being a giant floating head, is actually a really super confident genius at navigating the social landscape and manipulating people.
Bingo! Lost weight, but he's still self-conscious about it.
So I should call him fat. Genius.
No. Ask the other two how they stay in such good shape.
Jodie is an influencer, which is, evil on its own.
Socks can be folded into the shape of a Bavarian pretzel. And it only took us 10 hours. Jesus.
But compounded by her drive to climb the ladder any means necessary.
Are you just dating me for the fame?
Yeah.
She really does have nice hair, though. I don't know why. I think she has the best hair in the show. It's the French curves that I think I'm drawn to. And Lou is a magician in training who needs constant attention and pampering.
Yeah, I have your 2 cribs and the trundle bed you ordered.
Bellissima! I'll take as many as you can fit in Bed World!
And if that's not the first part of an origin story. Although he does use his stagecraft to get MODOK out of trouble in a really satisfying way one episode.
Gonna saw me in half? Oh, you're gonna saw me in half.
The whole show has a really great cast of characters. The whole world feels just organic in ways that even some of the live-action properties can't quite grasp. I think that comes from the creators being really media savvy and knowing enough about all these different characters and just how to use them to just their best effect. There's one episode where they really got me with a twist, and they did that by underplaying a character so much that your guard is down.
What's his face?
So when I rewatched it, I was like, oh man, how could I not see that coming? They brought Arcade in for one episode, and I was like, oh, okay, here's Marvel's Joker Riddler proxy.
Hello. Arcade and Arcade is here.
But you know what? That episode was a real nail biter. My favorite of the season, actually. That's because Arcade had a way of countering every assumption and move that the family made.
Everyone, grab the 2 family members you came in with. That'll help us start figuring out who's who.
So yeah, I actually have a newfound appreciation for this character.
Don't you hate it when the floor does that?
Last character I want to talk about is Monica, who is kind of the second in command at AIM. The organization that MODOK is in charge of. It's an interesting relationship she has with MODOK. At first, she admired him, but then the years of ineptitude and obsession with taking over the world has caused her to see him as not a rival, more like an obstacle.
I did this because you suck, and AIM sucks because of you. You're a bad scientist, and if anyone remembers you, it will only be as the piece of shit I stepped over on my way to the top.
It's a push and a pull, but by the end of the day, they really seem to respect each other. She's just, really aggressive and fun, and I just like that MODOK has a work buddy.
Hey, Monica.
Carmela, call me Mom. Or when I'm hiding from MODOK in my dead manatee, Mama T.
And why are you hiding from MODOK?
He's planning something. He's coming for me. You should have seen the way he was eating oatmeal. He's unhinged.
I thought this might have been an original character they made for this series, but it turns out she was actually introduced around 2005. And yeah, in one iteration, she does have a history with MODOK. So that might be fun to see if that plays out here. The style is great. It is clearly a Robot Chicken production. But the puppets are a little nicer than, say, on the company's other original works. Like Super Mansion, that one, Voltron one, I don't quite remember the name of. Or, I'd say, Buddy Thunderstruck. And I think that might be because the budget is bigger.
Well, why aren't we wearing swimsuits? What, are we made of money?
One thing, though, it was around episode 8 when I noticed that the mouths of the other characters looked like they were animated. And I think that's because the characters are all just strapped to chairs, and it's just really long periods of dialogue with barely any moving. And I was like, that looks weird. Especially the mouth on MODOK's daughter. It just kind of looks a little blurry at times. And after that, I couldn't really unsee it. I know that MODOK's mouth is definitely a replacement because you can see the seams. That is until young MODOK's cheek line starts to move in this one scene. So now I don't know. I don't know if it's all CGI or if it's just CGI on some of the more difficult characters that it would to have replacement animation on. I know in the early days of Robot Chicken that they experimented with animating mouths over the figures after the animation was done, like, in After Effects. But Seth said that it just didn't look right. But technology has improved, so I wouldn't put them past it to, try it now and streamline the, the production. Or, shit, I haven't watched Robot Chicken in a while. They might have been doing this for a bit. There is a wonderful behind-the-scenes video about the making of MODOK, but it is really frustrating because all of the human puppets don't have any mouths, which supports my theory, but doesn't provide confirmation. There's this one shot where Jodie's face is just obscured by a bunch of camera equipment, and I was like, come on!
What the hell?
Weakest parts. Out of place Robot Chicken jokes. For example, there's one where they just have a Pokemon battle. And it sounds like... You can tell Patton Oswalt maybe doesn't understand what Pokemon is. And they showed him a clip and then he kind of parroted what the characters do. They're few and far between, but when they show up, they hit you like a ton of bricks and just kind of wreck the flow of everything. Gary, who is MODOK's most loyal henchman, is kind of just another take on Gary from the Robot Star Wars episodes. At least in the beginning, you can just totally tell. He grows into his own unique character by the end of the season. But still, it was just kind of a little bit, okay, a little distracting. And finally, I wish Ben Schwartz, who plays Lou, would just tone it down a bit. I know that his character is meant to be bombastic and grating on the nerves. Hey man, mission accomplished.
Now, look in your pocket.
Did you put cream corn in my pocket?
A trick and a treat.
Ironically, he gets less annoying when there are more of him around. Overall, a really interesting take that again gives me some newfound appreciation for these characters. If you're not into the whole supervillains walking around in broad daylight setting, I can't blame you for not getting into this. But you will miss out on like a really good story that subverts a lot of these quirky family villain stories. And just like actually by the end of the season, it will leave you waiting to see what happens. And this reminds me of when I was in college. I was really getting into just like the mainline comic books. And I got burned out super quick because of things like Civil War that just were like dominated every storyline across all their titles for like 2 years. And I was just like, and that sort of happened with the MCU. Where I was just like, okay, I kind of checked out at Ant-Man. Ant-Man was like the last time I watched a Marvel movie and was like, oh, this is a neat character. And then I went to Avengers and Spider-Man, and then you're always waiting to see who will show up and how this will play into another thing. I'm sure that WandaVision is fantastic, but then everyone has said that it's like the new linchpin in the continuing MCU. So I don't know. I got kind of checked out on that. But this always reminds me about how I would like pick up a limited run series that had like a really quirky art style and just like took the character in just a weird direction. And it just played in its own space. And I really appreciate that. And if that sounds interesting to you too, then I definitely suggest that you give MODOK a shot.
So, should we get something to eat?